Hello and welcome back to Switch and Lever. So, as you may have seen from some previous videos on this channel, I do enjoy experimenting with sounds and music. Even though I'm not much of a musician myself. Today I thought we would look at constructing our own piezoelectric contact microphone and use it to record some really cool sounds. So, let's get started. As always, let's preface this with a little light theory and talk about what a piezo element actually is. Essentially, they're small discs on which a ceramic piezoelectric material is put. The piezoelectric material has a property which makes it expand or contract slightly when voltage is applied. This property makes them perfect speakers for things like digital watches, greeting cards, or anything that's small and flat and doesn't require a high quality speaker. They're also common in devices which only require beeping or a signal rather than any sort of high quality audio. This is a 123 decibel piezo siren, which, if you didn't figure that out by now, is really loud. Holy bejesus. On the other hand, if you apply vibration to it, and as we know, sound is just vibration, it will output a voltage, making it essentially act like a microphone. If you then read that voltage, you will be picking up the sound that it is sensing. As opposed to a normal microphone, which picks up sound waves traveling through air, a piezo disc is not sensitive enough to do that with any great success. But they are, on the other hand, very adept at picking up vibrations traveling through solid objects. This is what makes them ideal as contact microphones, where they are in contact with the item generating the sound. And that is what makes them very popular within the cigar box guitar community, as well as among those electrifying acoustic instruments. You can buy ready-made solutions for this, but with a little bit of soldering know-how, it's very easy to make your own, and to boot quite cheap, since the piezo discs can be bought for hardly any cost. If nothing else, you could always salvage them from old broken devices which already have them inside. We will build two devices, one which is a little more akin to an instrument and one that is more suited for recording sounds from a wide variety of sources. To begin, we will need an enclosure, the actual piezo discs, a grounding bar, and a 3.5mm audio jack. First thing we're going to need to do is to drill holes into the enclosure to be able to mount the audio jack and the grounding bar. Make sure that you choose your dullest drill for this to make it as challenging as possible to drill the hole. Now that it's all mounted, we can start by soldering wires to the piezo discs. I would recommend doing it now before you put them into the enclosure, especially if you're using a metal enclosure, as that will wick away heat and make soldering unnecessarily difficult. I'm putting in two piezos for no other reason than I've heard anecdotal evidence that different sized discs work differently on different frequency ranges. I'm hoping that the bigger piezo will be a bit more sensitive to bassier, low frequency sounds and the small one to higher frequencies. You don't have to use two, a single piezo will work just fine. But if you do use two or more, it's important to attach them in parallel rather than in series, as if you connect them in series, you will double the impedance of the discs. Once the wires are soldered on, I attach the discs to the top of the enclosure using double-sided sticky tape. You can use thicker and softer tape if you want to cut down the higher frequencies picked up even further, essentially providing a cushion between the enclosure and the piezo discs. If you on the other hand want raw, unfiltered sound, you could just attach them with superglue. I'm going somewhere in between with a reasonably thin double-sided tape. You may have to experiment until you find something that works for you, and if I find this too overpowered in the high frequencies, I will likely switch to a thicker tape. Once you've then soldered the wires from the discs to the output jack and closed up the enclosure, it's actually done and you can take it for a spin. Attach it to your audio recorder of choice and get experimenting. The whole reason for the grounding bar is so that you can attach various things to the enclosure and play them as if they were an instrument. You could of course attach metal tines and play them much like in a kalimba, or you could choose more fantastical things and see what they sound like. That makes me curious. I wonder how a PCB would sound like when played. Okay, so maybe not that one, but I wonder if one could design a PCB solely from an acoustic point of view. For whatever reason you make PCBs, do head on over to PCBWay. They have years of experience and can make PCBs to your exacting specifications, regardless if you need just a few for prototyping or thousands for production. They also provide PCB assemblies, so you can rely on them all through the process from prototype to production board to populated and functioning circuit board ready to put into your product. Of course, you won't be able to attach everything to this enclosure, and that's why we will build a second piezo device that's more standalone. I cut out some plywood on the laser cutter to create a small puck which the piezo fits into. I then cut apart an audio cable and soldered its wires directly to the piezo disc, before, just like we did with the enclosure, sticking it down with double-sided tape. I filled the top of the disc with hot glue, both to act as a strain relief for the wires, as well as helping to cut down on those high frequencies we talked about before. The whole thing was glued together, sanded smooth, and given a coat of varnish. On the bottom I also placed a thin piece of foam to give it a little further reduction of those high frequencies. So the difference of this puck compared to the metal enclosure we built before is that you can place this against larger objects like this glass pane or this railing and record the sounds they make when played. Heck, you could even place this against yourself to record sounds from your own body, or even your own voice through your jawbone.
The Human Torch was denied a bank loan.
I'm sure you can think of many more creative uses than what I've shown you here. Now that we've done all this and we have two piezo devices, let's put them to some use and see if we can come up with something at least mildly creative. And that's all she wrote, folks. I hope I managed to give you a little insight in playing around with piezo devices yourself. Remember the thing that I keep telling myself: you don't have to be a musician to make music, as long as you enjoy what you do. Make sure to check out some of the previous videos from Switch and Lever, and head on over to the merch store to kit yourself up in the latest and greatest. Until next time!